The wind howled through the brittle cornstalks, carrying the scent of damp earth and forgotten promises. Elias Turner, hunched and gray, stood motionless in the field where his world had ended 3 years ago. His boots sank into the soil where Clara, his wife of 50 years, had collapsed, her laughter silenced forever. Elias hadn't spoken since that day. The townsfolk of Willow Creek whispered about the old farmer who'd turned to stone, his voice buried with Clara under the weight of grief. His farm, once vibrant with her songs and the hum of their shared life, now lay barren, save for a single patch of wildflowers she'd loved. Each morning, Elias shuffled to that patch, staring as if waiting for her to rise from the earth. The hospital bed was cold, its sterile white a stark contrast to the warm browns of his fields. At 82, Elias's body had begun to betray him, his heart stuttering like an old tractor. The nurse, a young woman named Sarah with kind eyes and a braid that reminded him of Clara's, checked his chart daily. She spoke softly, filling the silence with stories of her own Lithia garden she tended, a dog that chased fireflies. Elias listened, his lips sealed, his eyes distant. Sarah didn't push. She'd heard the rumors. Elias Turner, the man who'd stopped talking when his wife died. But she saw something in his weathered face, a flicker of life, like embers in a dying fire. One evening, as the sun dipped below the hospital window, painting the room in shades of amber, Sarah sat beside him. "You know, Mr. Turner," she said, "my grandma used to say planting something new helps heal old wounds." Elias's fingers twitched against the bedsheet. His gaze drifted to the window, where the world outside blurred into memory. Clara's hands, calloused but gentle, had once coaxed life from this earth. She'd planted sunflowers that stretched toward the sky, their golden faces mirroring her smile. The field where she'd fallen was empty now, save for those wildflowers that bloomed despite neglect. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in years, a sound escaped him, a low, ragged breath. Sarah leaned closer, startled. "Mr. Turner?" she whispered. His lips parted, dry as the cracked earth of his farm. "Plant something," he rasped, his voice a ghost of itself. Where Clara, he couldn't finish, but his eyes, glistening with unshed tears, told Sarah enough. She nodded, her heart pounding. "I will," she promised. "I'll make it beautiful for her." The next day, Sarah drove to the Turner farm. The fields were a patchwork of neglect, but the wildflower patch stood out, vibrant against the gray. She knelt, her hands sinking into the soil, and imagined Clara there laughing, tending her flowers, her spirit woven into the land. Sarah didn't know what to plant yet, but she felt the weight of Elias's words, a fragile thread connecting him to the world he'd abandoned. Back at the hospital, Elias lay silent again, but something had shifted. Sarah noticed it in the way his hands relaxed, the way his eyes followed her when she spoke. She began bringing him small tokens, a sprig of lavender, a pebble from the farm. Each time, his fingers brushed hers, a silent thank you. But the town wasn't as kind. Rumors swirled about Sarah's visits to the farm. "She's meddling," they said. "Elias doesn't want anyone touching Clara's land." One evening, a stranger appeared at the hospital, a man in his 50s, broad-shouldered, with eyes that carried the same weight as Elias's. He introduced himself as Jacob, Elias's estranged son. "I heard you're poking around my father's farm," Jacob said, his voice sharp. "Leave it alone. That place is his, and it's hers. You're not family." Sarah's stomach twisted. She hadn't known Elias had a son. The townsfolk never mentioned him, and Elias's silence had kept his secrets buried. "I'm just trying to help," she said, her voice steady despite the accusation. "Help?" Jacob scoffed. "You think you can fix him? He stopped living when she did. You're wasting your time." Sarah held his gaze, her resolve firm. "He spoke to me," she said quietly. "He asked me to plant something where your mother was." Jacob froze, his face a storm of disbelief and pain. For a moment, Sarah thought he might break, but he turned and left without another word. That night, Sarah sat by Elias's bed, her mind racing. Jacob's arrival was a twist she hadn't expected, a reminder that grief wasn't just Elias's burden, but a family's fracture. She wondered what had driven Jacob away, what wounds kept him from his father's side. But as she looked at Elias, his breathing steady, she felt a quiet determination. She would plant something, not just for Clara, but for the man who'd finally spoken, and maybe for the son who couldn't. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and fading hope, but Sarah carried the scent of earth with her, clinging to her clothes from another visit to Elias's farm. She'd spend hours there, sketching plans for a garden where Clara's wildflowers bloomed. Sunflowers, she decided, would be the heart of it and unyielding, like Clara's spirit. Elias's condition worsened. His heart, the doctor warned, was a ticking clock. Sarah felt the urgency in her bones, a need to fulfill his whispered wish before time ran out. She brought him updates, describing the soil she'd turned, the seeds she'd chosen. His eyes, once dull, sparked with something alive. Clara loved sunflowers, he murmured one evening, his voice stronger but still fragile, like a seedling breaking through frost. Sarah smiled, her heart swelling. I know, she said. I found her old gardening journal in the farmhouse. She wrote about them, how they followed the sun, how they reminded her to keep looking up. Elias's lips twitched, almost a smile. She said that, he whispered, every summer. But Jacob's shadow loomed. He'd returned to Willow Creek, staying at a rundown motel on the edge of town. Sarah saw him once, watching her from across the street as she left the farm. His presence was a puzzle. Why had he come back now, after years of absence? She wanted to ask Elias, but his silence had returned, as if Jacob's name was a weight too heavy to lift. One afternoon, Sarah found an old photograph tucked in Clara's journal. Young Jacob, maybe 10, grinning beside his mother in the sunflower field. The back read, "My boy, my son." The tenderness in Clara's handwriting made Sarah's chest ache. She slipped the photo into her pocket, determined to understand the rift. At the hospital, she showed Elias the photo. His hands trembled as he took it, his eyes tracing the faded image. He was her light, he said, his voice breaking. But I pushed him away. Sarah waited, sensing the story he'd buried. What happened? She asked gently. Elias's gaze drifted to the window. After Clara died, I couldn't look at him. He had her eyes, her laugh. Every time he spoke, it was like losing her again. I told him to leave, said the farm didn't need him. He was 25. He packed a bag and never came back. The confession hung heavy, a wound laid bare. Sarah's throat tightened. She saw now why Jacob's return was a storm, guilt and grief colliding. He's here now, she said. Maybe he wants to make things right. Elias shook his head. Too late, he whispered. Too much time. But Sarah wasn't ready to give up. She tracked Jacob down at the motel, the photo in her hand. He opened the door, his face guarded. What do you want? He asked. She held out the photo. Your mother called you her son. Your father, he's hurting, but he's talking again. Because of her. Because of you. Jacob stared at the photo, his jaw tight. He didn't want me, he said, voice raw. He chose his grief over me. He was broken, Sarah said. But he's trying now. He needs you, Jacob. And I think you need him. Jacob didn't respond, but he took the photo, his fingers lingering on the edges. Sarah left, hoping she'd planted a seed of her own. Back at the farm, Sarah worked tirelessly. The sunflower patch began to take shape, each seed a promise to Elias and Clara. But a new figure appeared, one evening, a woman in her 60s, wiry and sharp-eyed, carrying a basket of gardening tools. I'm Martha, she said. Clara's sister. I heard what you're doing. I want to help. Sarah blinked, surprised. No one had mentioned Clara having a sister. Martha's arrival was like a gust of wind, stirring the story in a new direction. Why now? Sarah asked. Martha's eyes softened. Clara and I fought before she died. I never got to say goodbye. This garden, it's my chance to make it right. Together, they worked, their hands blending past and present in the soil. Martha shared stories of Clara, her stubbornness, her love for Elias, her dreams for Jacob. Sarah realized the garden wasn't just for Elias. It was a tapestry of everyone Clara had touched. As the sunflowers began to sprout, Sarah felt a flicker of hope. But Elias's health was fading, and Jacob's silence lingered. Could a garden heal a family broken by time? The sunflowers stood taller now, their green stems reaching for light in the field where Clara's laughter once echoed. Sarah and Martha worked side by side, their hands stained with earth, their conversations weaving memories of Clara into the garden. But Elias's time was slipping away, his breath shallow, his eyes often lost in a place Sarah couldn't reach. She visited him daily, bringing updates about the garden. The sunflowers are sprouting, she told him one morning, holding up a photo of the field. They're strong, like Clara. Elias's fingers brushed the photo, his lips trembling. "She'd love this," he whispered. "She'd say they're dancing with the sun." His voice, though weak, carried a warmth Sarah hadn't heard before. It was as if the garden was pulling him back, if only for a moment. But Jacob remained a ghost. Sarah had seen him once more, lingering near the farm, watching from a distance. He never approached, and Martha, who'd known him as a boy, said little about him. "He's stubborn, like his father," she remarked one day, her voice tinged with regret. Clara always hoped they'd find their way back to each other. Sarah clung to that hope, but doubt crept in. Elias's heart was failing, and the hospital's sterile walls seemed to sap what little strength he had left. She wondered if the garden would bloom in time for him to see it, or if Jacob would ever step into its light. One evening, as Sarah watered the sunflowers, a boy appeared at the edge of the field no older than 12, with a mop of dark hair and curious eyes. "You're planting for Mr. Turner, right?" he asked, his voice bright but cautious. Sarah nodded, wiping sweat from her brow. "Who are you?" "I'm Ben," he said. "I live down the road. My grandpa used to help Mr. Turner with the harvest. He said this place used to be full of life." Sarah smiled, touched by the boy's earnestness. "It will be again," she said. "Want to help?" Ben's face lit up, and he joined her, his small hands eager to dig and plant. His presence was a spark, a reminder of the community Clara had loved. Ben shared stories his grandfather had told him, how Clara would bake pies for the harvest crew, how Elias would carry her through the fields when she grew tired. "Grandpa said Mr. Turner stopped smiling when she died," Ben added quietly. "But you're making him smile again, aren't you?" Sarah's throat tightened. "I'm trying," she said. Ben became a regular, his chatter filling the quiet moments. Martha warmed to him, too, teaching him how to prune the sunflowers. But one afternoon, as they worked, Jacob appeared at the field's edge, his face unreadable. Sarah's heart raced. She hadn't expected him to return so soon. "What's this?" Jacob asked, his voice sharp as he gestured to Ben. "You're turning my mother's field into a playground?" Ben shrank back, but Sarah stepped forward. "He's helping," she said. "This garden is for your father, for your mother. It's for everyone who loved her." Jacob's eyes flickered to Ben, then to the sunflowers. For a moment, Sarah thought she saw a crack in his armor, but he turned away. "It's not your place," he said, his voice low. "Or his." Martha, who'd been quiet, spoke up. "It's Clara's place," she said firmly. "And she'd want it alive again. She'd want you here, Jacob." Jacob's jaw tightened, and he left without a word. But Sarah noticed he'd lingered longer this time, his gaze lingering on the sunflowers. That night, she sat with Elias, her heart heavy. "Jacob came to the field today," she said. "He's angry, but I think he's hurting more." Elias's eyes glistened. "I failed him," he whispered. "I failed her." Sarah took his hand. "You're still here," she said. "And so is he. There's time." But time was cruel. The next morning, the doctor pulled Sarah aside. "His heart's giving out," he said. "Days, maybe." Sarah felt the world tilt. She returned to the farm with renewed urgency, Ben and Martha at her side. The sunflowers were budding now, their yellow petals just beginning to unfurl. She imagined Elias seeing them, imagined Jacob standing in their light. As dusk fell, Ben pointed to the horizon. "Look," he said. A figure stood there, Jacob, his silhouette stark against the fading sun. He didn't approach, but he didn't leave either. Sarah's heart lifted. Maybe, just maybe, the garden was working its magic. The sunflowers bloomed at last, their golden heads swaying in the breeze, a living echo of Clara's joy. Sarah stood in the field, her hands trembling with exhaustion and hope. Ben ran between the rows, laughing, while Martha adjusted a stake to support a drooping stem. The garden was alive, but Elias's time was running out. Sarah brought him a sunflower that morning, its petals bright against the hospital's sterile white. "They're blooming," she said, placing it in his hands. "Just like Clara wanted." Elias's eyes, clouded with fatigue, softened. "She's here," he whispered, his fingers tracing the petals. "I feel her." His voice was faint, but it carried a peace Sarah hadn't heard before. She sat with him, telling him about the garden, about Ben's laughter, about Martha's stories. She didn't mention Jacob, but his shadow hung between them. That afternoon, Sarah returned to the farm to find Jacob there, standing among the sunflowers. His hands were in his pockets, his face a mix of grief and wonder. "You did this," he said, not looking at her. For him. For both of you, Sarah replied. And for her. Jacob's eyes met hers, raw and unguarded. I left because I couldn't stay, he said. Every inch of this place was her. And he pushed me out. Sarah nodded, understanding the weight of his words. He regrets it, she said. He told me. He's been carrying that guilt all these years. Jacob looked away, his gaze fixed on a sunflower. I don't know how to forgive him, he admitted. You don't have to yet, Sarah said. Just see him. Let him see you. Jacob didn't respond, but he stayed in the field, his presence a quiet shift. Sarah felt a spark of hope. Maybe the garden was weaving them back together, one fragile thread at a time. That evening, Ben ran up to Sarah, breathless. I found something, he said, holding out a small, weathered box he'd dug up near the wildflowers. Inside was a locket, engraved with Clara's initials, and a note in her handwriting. For Jacob, my son. Come home. Sarah's heart stopped. She showed the locket to Martha, who gasped. She made this before she died, Martha said. She always hoped he'd come back. Sarah knew what she had to do. She drove to the motel, the locket in her pocket. Jacob was there, staring at the photo she'd given him. She handed him the locket and the note. She never stopped loving you, Sarah said. Jacob's hands shook as he read the note. Tears fell, silent and heavy. I thought she'd forgotten me, he whispered. She never did, Sarah said. And neither did he. The next morning, Sarah arrived at the hospital to find Jacob at Elias's bedside. The old man was awake, his eyes wide with disbelief. Jacob held the locket, his voice low but steady. I'm here, Dad, he said. I'm sorry I stayed away. Elias reached for his son's hand, his grip weak but fierce. My boy, he whispered, tears streaming down his face. My son. Sarah stepped back, her heart full. The garden had done more than bloom, it had brought a family back together. She returned to the farm, where Ben and Martha were adding final touches to the sunflower patch. The field was a sea of gold, a testament to Clara's love and Elias's healing. As the sun set, Sarah stood among the flowers, feeling Clara's presence in the warmth of the earth. She knew Elias wouldn't see the garden in person. His heart was too weak, but he'd seen it through her words, through Jacob's return. The hospital called that night. Elias had passed, his hand in Jacob's, a smile on his lips. Sarah wept, but not just from grief. The garden, the sunflowers, the locket they'd given Elias peace, and Jacob a chance to heal. Sarah, Martha, and Ben stood in the field the next day, the sunflowers towering above them. Jacob joined them, his eyes red but clear. Thank you, he said to Sarah. For her. For him. Sarah smiled, her heart heavy but whole. For all of us, she said.